Welcome to the Bucket Plan on Demand, a podcast for financial advisors based on the best-selling book and process that simplifies financial planning. Hear from skilled industry professionals and special guests each episode that will help perfect your approach with clients and your results.
Welcome, everybody. As you're trickling in, I'll introduce, I don't think Stoyan needs much introduction. He's been in the industry for nearly 3 decades. And I've actually ran into Stoyan, or I've had different relationships with Stoyan in a couple of different places. He's laid his hat on the shelf. But he has got all of the alphabet after his name. He's CFP, CFA, CLU, CHFC, BPC, ABC, XYZ, all that good stuff. So obviously he has a lot of knowledge in the industry. He's very, very, I've talked to Stoyan several times on some advanced cases, especially when it involves insurance planning or special arrangements with buy, sell, and, go down the list. So very happy to have Stoyan here to make me look really good today. So welcome, Stoyan. How are you today?
Excellent. Well, thanks. That was some introduction.
But you never had that one before, huh?
No. That's awesome. It's hard to live up to that introduction now.
No, you'll be fine. So to kick it off, Stoyan, let's just start off with, we're not saying that we're obviously in stagnation. It's a terminology that's been thrown around a lot recently because of kind of the unusual economic circumstances that we're in right now, and some of the things that are going on with the policies that are being done, and just overall some of the things that we're experiencing. But go ahead, if you would, and just talk about some of the signals that we should be watching, or maybe just give maybe a little bit broad definition on what stagnation is for everybody here, so they kind of have a little bit of a starting point in terms of what the discussions will be today.
So to kick things off, stagflation in particular is basically a toxic cocktail of 3 different things happening together at once. And so you have a slow economic growth, typically between 1% and 2%. Think of it as GDP growth. At the same time, you have a rising inflation. And on top of it, the third stool in that definition for stagflation is rising unemployment. And so when you combine all these 3 factors into one, it is that toxic combination that all the economists all over the world are really afraid of, because of the effects that it has on the economic growth, on yields, on central bank response, on how clients' money are being invested. And the last time I think we saw stagflation here in the U.S. was back in the 70s.
Yep.
And I mean, growing up in Eastern Europe, I saw that the last time I saw that was back in the 90s. So it is that time when things don't particularly work well in the marketplace as far as equity returns. You typically have price shocks, and if I bring it down to the U.S. back in the 70s, that was more into the oil shocks and policy mistakes from the central bank or the Federal Reserve. And the Fed is usually boxed into those periods, because if they reduce rates, typically what happens is inflation goes up because you're stepping on the gas pedal from an economic perspective. If they raise rates to combat inflation, then what happens is the economic growth slows, because now credit drives economic growth. So you're kind of boxed in a tiny corner, and whatever decision you make, it may come back to bite you. So why is stagflation such a bad word? Because of that inflation persistency. So if you think about from a company perspective, the company's major inputs are either labor And if wages are rising, but you're not able to sell your product because of the slowing economic growth overall, your margins get compressed. So that's one of the aspects of that particular economic response. Or you're seeing your economic inputs, or the cost of those inputs, whether it's going to be imported goods or whether it's going to be materials like oil or natural gas or corn or pork bellies. It doesn't matter. The material cost that goes into production is going up, and you're not able to raise prices quick enough to address that. So you have compressed margins. So that's kind of the response that you see into the equity markets, because equity markets usually dance to the tune of profitability. And if profits are increasing, equity prices are increasing. If profits are contracting, obviously equity prices are contracting as well. So as far as what to look for, now that we have kind of a general idea of what stagflation is, what to look for. So you typically look from an inflation perspective. You look at the CPI reports. You look at the Federal Reserve's favorite gauge, which is personal consumer expenditures, or PCE. And those are the things that they look for to track how inflation is moving throughout the economy, throughout the different sectors. And that's what you should pay attention to if you want to keep a close eye on inflation. If and the reason why you should pay attention to that is because if prices are rising without a corresponding growth in demand, that's a bad combination. As far as economic growth, you look at things like GDP growth, that comes out every quarter. But there are actually nowcasts on GDP growth that you can track online in live, in a kind of very close live session, if you will. And those you can also look at industrial manufacturing. I know that we're trying to bring a lot of industrial jobs back to this country, so that's one indicator that you should be looking for. And as far as unemployment, my favorite indicator for unemployment is reported every Thursday, and that's as close to the real time as you can get, and that's the unemployment benefits and unemployment claims as well. So it's because people typically, if they lose a job, they go and file for unemployment benefits, and they file an unemployment claim, and that's why that's a more realistic measure of what's happening to the employment market as pretty much anything out there, because usually that's a trailing indicator. People realize what has happened to employment after it has happened. I know companies announce that, but it takes a while for that to filter through. So the more real time indicator for me is unemployment claims.
So everybody got that? Clarified, right?
We can talk about we can talk about later about what that means for portfolios as well.
I feel I can write a white paper now. The bottom line, you guys simply stated, I think the difficulty in what Stoyan's expressing here is it's very difficult to create policy to combat the situation, because whatever you do to act in one area is going to be counterproductive in the other areas. So that's why it was so unsettling in the 70s when it occurred. So, but no, thank you, Stoyan. I kid with you a lot and joke with you. Your knowledge is well beyond my grasp with some things for sure. But, there's a lot of other mitigating factors today that is adding to fuel to the fire, so to speak. And, there's always the conversation around the tariffs and, how they could potentially contribute. So maybe share a little bit on, your thoughts on how the tariff situation could kind of fuel the fire a bit.
So the reason why people have been talking about stagflation lately is mostly because of that tariff discussion, because the increase in tariffs actually affect input prices, and it's a it's an inflation. It's a tax on consumption, and whether it doesn't matter who takes the brunt of it, whether it's the consumer through increased prices, or companies through increased input costs. It doesn't matter who takes the brunt of that. Somebody has to take that cost and eat it. And some companies have decided to pass that on. Some companies have decided to eat it. Some governments have decided to eat that as well. But that input cost, as that input cost increases because of globalization over the last 30 or so years, it kind of permeates into the economy at some point. Whether the company decides to jack up the prices today or gradually over time, it doesn't really matter. It eventually finds its way into consumer prices. And so the reason why people have been talking about stagflation since about April, May is because the economy has muddled along at the tune of maybe 2% annual growth. At the same time, inflation is starting to perk up, and then the Fed is trying to decide, are they going to cut interest rates next month, or they're going to keep things steady to see how it all plays out. So that's why the conversation about stagflation, and the reason why we care about that from a financial advisor standpoint and discussion with clients is because typically what you see during stagflation periods is that, and we can go back to the 70s as the latest example, equity returns during stagflation periods have been anywhere from negative to barely positive over those types of periods versus about 10% average outside of stagflation periods. So the fact that those returns are such, that's why the conversation has been had over time, and the tariffs are not helping because if you think if you're increasing the cost to a company, either from a production or input standpoint, and you're not able to raise prices because of stagnant economic growth, that creates the pressure on profits and profit margins.
So here's the good news. I mean, I always like when there's uncertainty in the marketplace, uncertainty in the economy, because that's an opportunity to have a conversation with your clients. And it's likely a conversation that your current advisors aren't having, or their current advisors, right? So anytime you see this type of uncertainty, potential volatility, potential poor returns, these are all great talking points. In fact, we'll announce a bit later, the new Weathering the Storm presentation has been kind of updated. We're going to add it to our regimen. It's just this, weathering the storm. Uncertainty creates interest. And it's an opportunity to educate clients or opportunities or prospects in a way that they're likely not getting educated. So that's the good news. Do we have to understand everything about stagflation? No, because you're not going to explain, you need to have a broad understanding of it, in terms of what it is, but you're not going to explain what Stoyan just did to your clients. You're just going to say, wow, this is something that could seriously impact your future. What's your plan for stagnation? Where things could be this uncertainty about rising prices, unemployment going up, and slow economic growth, which could dramatically impact the outcome. So what things have you thought about in your planning? What discussions have you had with your current advisor about addressing these situations? And you're going to hear crickets. That's the best thing you want to hear is crickets, right? Well, do you think it's relevant? Do you think it's important that we should address these types of things? So that broadens the opportunity for you in this environment to be very proactive and capture people that have been with these advisors forever. And everybody loves their advisors right now because what has the market's been doing? Just the number go up, right? So they're like, oh, I got the best advisor in the world. It doesn't matter. I had one lady, he made money, but cost her $35,000 in taxes because they didn't know what a step-up cost basis was. And we did their taxes. So these are the points that you can go in and talk to them about and look at capturing opportunities, because it's actually, to me, an opportunity that if it does occur a little bit, that we haven't had for any extended period of time for a while. right? These little bumps in the market, 3 weeks later, everything's great. Sooner or later, you're going to see an extended period, and this could be that time where you have to be thinking outside the box. So let's talk a little bit about that. And so is it something you should be talking about? Absolutely, something you should be talking about. But let's talk a little bit about, some of the things you can be doing. So focusing, on the proactive planning and using these historical comparisons and, just emphasizing the long-term strategy of the bucket plan is going to create the opportunity, right? It just emphasizes more now, sooner than later. If I'm going to be stagnant in growth, and we're in a high interest rate environment, why wouldn't I want to use and diversify to some fixed rates and some guaranteed things, using some triggers in the soon bucket where we can capitalize on 4, 5, 6% rate of return when there's a potential of economic slowdown and we might have to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, but we don't have to worry about how our soon bucket's funded. So these are the opportunities you want to be looking at. From a portfolio perspective, Stoyan, what are some of the things that you might think would be adjustments or considerations, conversation pieces with clients to talk about, to create a little bit more confidence about what could potentially lie ahead?
That's why I love the bucket plan. I mean, just bottom line is because you can have those types of conversations regardless of the economic reality around us. The bucket plan is designed to address a lot of those issues that clients may be facing, whether it's going to be during the accumulation or distribution years. And you put it very well. This is a reason to go back and talk to your clients. And when you look at the bucket plan and how we have thought about the investment strategies that we have utilized within the bucket plan, let's look at one simple example of the indexed annuity. Well, what drives indexed annuity? Indexed annuity is driven by interest rates. Well, what happens during stagflationary periods? Well, interest rates typically go up. So if interest rates go up, that means that you have an opportunity to pick a very good place for your client's money in the swing bucket. That means that you have a lot more budget to buy interest rate hedges for your indexed annuities. That means that you have a lot more budget to use towards very generous living benefits in those annuities, whether it's going to be an income benefit, whether it's going to be a death benefit. So if you look from a portfolio perspective, what are typically the sectors that perform well in a stagflationary environment? And in a stagflationary environment, typically what you see is small caps do tend to perform well. You see value stocks performing well. And you see things that are focused on materials or energy that are going to be doing well. So why do I say that? Because you have two very good managers in our strategic portfolio that actually focus on those things. You look at Dimensional, one of kind of two of their three uniques are focused on small caps and value stocks. And you look at somebody like the Valor United, BlackRock evaluates the economic conditions on the ground on a weekly basis. So they have the opportunity to pivot the portfolio at any given time, whether it's going to be to more materials focused like gold and precious metals, or TIPS, for example, the Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. And then you look at something like our volatility buffer portfolio that we typically use in the swoon bucket, because what is the biggest characteristic of a stagflationary environment? The volatility. And so the volatility is elevated in the equity markets. So now if you have a 30% volatility buffer on the downside, then all of a sudden you can actually have annual resets for some of these buffers, and you can pick up a decent amount of the upside as you move clients from their accumulation to distribution years. You also look at the opportunities in the SMAs, the separately managed accounts. I mean, you talk about tax loss harvesting. This is a perfect opportunity for somebody to have a portfolio in an SMA with non-qualified funds that are interested in a tax loss harvesting situation. You also look at things like alternative assets, real estate. Those are assets that usually have a decent amount of real return throughout periods of stagflation. You look at some of the oil and gas opportunities. You look at some of the 1031 exchanges. Things do work in those types of periods as well, and that's why I'm so excited, because you have the framework here from a bucket plan perspective, that you can pick out those things that might work in that type of environment. The question is just have a conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stoyan. So, guys, like I said, to me, it's always an opportunity when you have new information in the news. Let's talk about client behavior, because client behavior, I think, is predictable for the most part in terms of what clients will feel, because they're going to feel the same way that, in general, that most people feel, not fully understanding. Now, all you're doing is fueling the fire. This economic condition, whether it exists or not, is just going to make the fear relevant, right? It's going to bring it to the forefront for these clients. These clients already naturally, inherently have these concerns. How is this thing going to work? And the biggest thing that we try to project for people in the whole bucket plan philosophy and creating an income plan is to create predictability, right? Why? The more predictable the outcome, the more confident you are in the plan, the more likely you'll spend money. Right? We want to give you permission to spend money. Use that terminology with your clients. We want to create the confidence to give you permission to spend money. I don't care about stagflation. We got a plan for it. Do you want to wait to your no-go years to enjoy retirement? No. Let's talk about how we give you the confidence today to spend the money in the go-go years. That's what they want to hear, right? That's what they just want to feel good about. They don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and give it 2 more seconds thought to stagnation and what it means and how government policies and tariffs are affecting their world. Right? All they want to know is their money's keeping pace with the increased cost of expenses, and that they're not going to run out of money, and they can feel good about enjoying the things that they want to do today. So, when we talk about that, that's where it's going to fall into, all the things that you're already doing. You're just creating a different cursor, a precursor, right? You're putting them in an environment and answering it again, and it's always the same answer. It's about planning. It's about creating, reducing the volatility, reducing the variance, as I call it, my clients, right? And nobody knows what's going to happen in the market. Nobody's going to know what's happening in insurance and interest rates. You go on and on and on and on and on and on, right? But the more we can shrink the variance in the outcome, the more predictable the result, the more likely we're going to enjoy the plan, right? And that's where you have conversations about promise-based income versus risk-based income, collecting Social Security early versus collecting late. Where should we position assets? How do we purpose assets? What is the sole purpose of the assumed bucket? To allow you not to lay down at night and think about stagflation. Because I could explain it to you. Guys, it goes back to the same conversations I've been having for decades with my clients, right? I tell them often the relationship we're going to have is like the relationship I have with my mechanic, right? When he starts talking about crap under the hood, right? I don't care. Just let me know if you can fix it, right? Shut the hood. I don't want to talk about how the engine works. Stoyan knows how the engine works. Stoyan, fix it, right? That's all I want from you is to fix it. If you can't fix it, let me know. I'll get a different car. So that's really what you want to do with these clients. So you don't have to worry about all these logistics. We solve that for you. You keep that high level so that, hey, you still got to be involved. If the indicator light goes on in the car, you got to let me know. You feel a little bit of vibration, you're a little worried, you just call me up. If you don't think the car's running right, come in and sit down. Let's do a checkup. Let's just have a review. Let's talk about where your concerns, your priorities, your goals are. That's what they want. They want a mechanic they can trust, right? They want to drop the car off and say, fix it, let me know when it's done. Does that make sense?
That is perfect, Greg. That is awesome. Those are the opportunities that we have to talk about every single time when we meet with clients, and it's like, what portion of your income would you like guaranteed? That's very simple. It's they don't care how the car is is under the hood. They just want to make sure that it gets them safely to where their destination is. So to me, every single change in market conditions is a reason to reconnect with people, to kind of update those plans, maybe rebalance, maybe update their income projections. It's always there's always an opportunity in whatever economic condition we're in, and I'm going to say journalists are going to scare people. That's not going to change. That's how they sell advertisements, is by having those scary headlines. But if you have a planning framework like the bucket plan, it just makes things so much easier. People get that peace of mind that that they don't care about the headlines anymore.
So guys have these conversations. A lot of people don't even realize this is a concern, right? I mean, if I was on the other side of retired, I'm not worried about it. I like who's handling my stuff. But it's like driving down the road in a rainstorm, right? You don't see the pothole when you hit it. It hurts just as bad when you see it, right? So all you want to do is say, there's a pothole coming up. It's covered with rain. We're just going to take care of it. We're going to avoid that pothole. And here's the proactive steps we're going to do. All they want is the conversation, right? They just want the conversation with you, knowing that you are watching out for them, that you are forecasting things that could create havoc or wreak havoc on their plan, and you're being a proactive advisor, right? It's the same thing with taxes. You know, with the preparation is the historian. We can plan, but management is the most critical part. How are you managing these things that are occurring with the constant changes in policies, tax laws, economic conditions? What are the proactive steps that you're taking for me? And that's what the client wants to know. They want to know that you're just proactively looking for the things that could cause a problem before they cause a problem, before they wreck the tie rod, right? They don't want to get a flat because they hit the pothole they didn't see. At the end of the day, you guys, it's just about providing information. You want this information out there, right? You want people to know about this because it's going to create questions and uncertainty. And guess what you have? You have the bucket plan. You have the answers. So give them the answers and rock out the rest of the year.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bucket Plan on Demand, brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Subscribe today for the latest episodes and insights. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help support and enhance your advisory business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.